And we're back with Legends of Lake Howell. This month, our guest is none other than Kawika Mitchell. So before we go into NFL, let's talk a little bit about your college football. You were a standout, pretty good at USF. As a matter of fact, you had the career record in tackles. I think it was about 367 tackles. How did you feel when how did that feel when someone broke the record?
It stood for about, I think maybe 14 years or so. I'm not sure, but I was excited for him. You know, I mean, that's kind of what you want. You know, you want to build something, a foundation that guys can go out and try to achieve, try to beat, and try to break certain records, and that's what it's about. So I was happy for him, you know, and now he's got it. You know, I like being number one in those records. I won't lie to you, but I was happy that a fellow linebacker at South Florida is able to have some success. So
the majority of our audience are students who are going to college. Can you give us an idea or insight of what it's like to be a student athlete?
Yeah, it's a lot of work. You know, on the good side of things, a lot of things are taken care of for you. So, you know, if you're trying to get in certain classes, if you need to, you know, certain books, all that stuff, the structure side, study hall, tutors, meals, all that is going to be taken care of. With that comes a price. You know, you got to be able to work extra hours. You got 20 hours of study hall, something like that. You know, you got practice, you got to lift weights, you got meetings, you got more meetings. Then you got time for your team. So you got to really, time management, I think, is probably the biggest thing that I remember going into college learning about. Because prior to that, I mean, I thought I had a little bit, but I really had no idea what it was about. So
let's transition from your time in college to becoming a professional athlete. What was it like what was that feeling that you had when you were drafted in the NFL?
It was kind of an interesting story. My son, my oldest, was born on Wednesday. We brought him home from the doctor on Friday. He had a checkup on Saturday. I got drafted Saturday afternoon. So, you know, what I envisioned was I was gonna be sitting on the couch with my son, watching the draft, watching my highlights. Then you get drafted. That's not how it happened. I went out to get something to eat, pick up some sushi. Me, my sister, and brother-in-law were in the Wendy's drive-thru. And I got a call from the Kansas City Chiefs, and they were like, "We're gonna go ahead and draft you in the second round at pick number 47. I was like, "Okay." And they're like, "Well, here's Coach so-and-so, here's the GM." And I'm like, "Okay." And I get off the phone, my sister's like, "What happened?" I was like, "Well, the Chiefs just drafted me." She was like, "What?" She was like, what do you mean? Like, cause it just kind of happened. But, you know, to have that happen, I was really supposed to be 5th rounder, 7th rounder, free agent. So to go in the second round was something that really I felt like I earned, but it was a surprise and a gift at the same time.
So oftentimes you find yourself, just like with the NFL, now you're in the NFL, but then you have that moment where you realize that, yeah, I'm really in the NFL. So when did you have that moment that said, yes, I'm in the NFL? What was that experience?
The exact moment was my first start was on a Monday night against the Oakland Raiders. And I grew up a Raider fan. And during the play, Tim Brown caught the ball, and I was also a Notre Dame fan, so I was a fan of his in college. And so he caught the ball, and I'm running after him, and I see T. Brown on the back of his jersey. And I think I said it out loud. I was like, "Man, that's Tim Brown." So it was in that moment where I was like, wow. Like this is really happening. I mean, and that was probably 2/3 through the season, you know. So it happens so fast. You know, everything, you get drafted, you move in, everything happens so fast. So that was the moment though where it hit me.
So let's talk about the Super Bowl. You had a pretty good game. 8 tackles, 1 sack. You sacked Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Did you say anything to him? What was that like?
Yeah, at that point, I'm really just trying not to fall over because you're so excited, you know, and the energy is just, you got to conserve your energy. But, you know, at that point, we were playing with so much confidence on defense. We were hitting them. I think we hit them like 28 times. And the real joy came afterwards, where we see pictures of him like just sitting on the ground, just kind of defeated.
Right. Yeah.
And we kept doing it to him and doing it to him. So, and that game came down to the end. So there was really no time to really even think about what was happening. You just made it happen, and then you move on. So that was kind of the beauty of the situation as well, just kind of being in the moment.
And that team was basically like the team of destiny, because at the time the Patriots, they were 16-0, and your team, I think, you were 10-6 or something at the time. At what point did your team, the Giants, know or have this idea that, man, we can win this thing?
Yeah, for some reason we couldn't win at home. Yeah. And that kind of worked to our advantage, because in the playoffs we had to win all of them on the road. But we felt that we were progressing and hitting our stride towards the end of the season. And I think going into the playoffs, whoever has momentum has a chance. And both of us had momentum, because like you said, they were undefeated. Yeah. And they were running through teams. They weren't just beating teams, they were beating them pretty bad. So going into it, we felt pretty confident, even though we were definitely the underdog. But I think that's kind of the position we liked as a team. We liked being counted out, and then we liked showing you what we could do. So it was definitely something that we walked into confidence.
So in addition to that team being 16-0, undefeated, that's what is one of the most memorable things about the Super Bowl. But also there's the catch, the helmet catch, David Tyree. Do you recall that moment, seeing that?
Oh, yeah. David Tyree, he didn't have a ton of catches through the year. He was a big special teams guy. We used him once in a while. And then going to the playoffs, he had a couple big games. And then that situation, Eli Manning, 100% of the time, he's probably going to get sacked. Like, he's not going to break tackles. He's not going to go out of it. And then he's going to make a throw on the move. It just is not going to happen. So that was against all odds. And I think during that drive, there were several 3rd and longs and these situations where it was just kind of like, oh man, like, can we just make this easier on ourselves? And it really, that was our destiny, is kind of make it like that, to have a catch against the helmet. That's kind of how it's supposed to be.
So you had an opportunity to play with some phenomenal athletes. Was there ever any athlete that you were just in awe of?
There were a few of them. Champ Bailey was one in college who I got to see him move around a little bit, and he kind of was just a little bit different, you could tell. And then somebody like Tony Gonzalez, who played basketball in the NBA, played basketball in college, and just kind of moved at a different pace than everybody else. And then people like Michael Strahan, who really taught me what it was to be a leader. So that involved his physical work as well as his mental and emotional work. So I was lucky to play with a few Hall of Famers.
So your position, being at linebacker, was there any athlete that you just hated to go against on the offensive side of the ball that you were like, man, I don't want to tackle this guy?
Jerome Bettis was one. I didn't have to face him too much. Jamal Lewis was one. Definitely in his prime, he was a guy that was hard to bring down. LaDainian Tomlinson. I remember one time I ran through the line. They gave him the ball, and I went to tackle him, and then all of a sudden he was gone. So then I looked around, and he was already past me, and I was like, oh man, how did this happen? And the last one, Chris Johnson, a local guy. I ran off the edge one time, and he ran backwards, and he was so fast he ran backwards to get away from me, and it was like, oh man, like what am I gonna do with this?
So how did you get into cycling? I mean, because you're a big guy. Yeah. So normally cyclists are small and yeah, you're a big guy. How did you get into the cycling?
Yeah, that was part of the challenge, was being okay with, it's kind of threatening, being not the typical cyclist, but it was good for my joints. There's not a lot of things that I can't do post-football. I can't jump around like I used to. I'm not going to be sprinting around like I used to. So cycling was a healthier option for me. And, riding with the smaller guys that are pretty fast is kind of my motivation, is to be able to keep up with them. So,
does it give you that same rush of that adrenaline rush that you had playing football, or not quite as much?
Thankfully, I don't really want as much, but it gives me enough. There's certain rides that we go pretty fast, some of the fastest rides in the area, and doing those definitely stimulates what I need as far as competitiveness and environment. So yeah.
You mentioned a local guy, so let's talk locally. Let's bring it back locally and talk about your time at Lake Howell High School. If you could describe your experience at Lake Howell High School in one word, what would that be?
Growth. For me, it was about growth.
Why growth?
I had quite the experience here. I kind of fell short my freshman year. I was removed from high school my freshman year and expelled, and then I was given the opportunity to come back my sophomore year, and it required me to grow academically, going from a 0.6 GPA to a 4.0. Doing things like getting involved with student government, becoming a vice principal of the school, and just maturity, and that's the process I had to go through at that time, and it really stuck with me for a long time after.
So if you can go back in time and talk to Kawika Mitchell, ninth grader, what advice, knowing what you know now, the experiences that you've had through college, the NFL, the Super Bowl, what would you say to him?
The coolest thing is probably not what looks the coolest. It's the things sometimes that I would see that would kind of motivate me, having fun or doing this or doing that or hanging out with this person or hanging out with that person. And really looking back now, it's what the possibilities of the things I could learn, and the relationships I could build and the things I could learn from those relationships. So that's probably the biggest thing. Just don't always go for what looks the best.
The last two questions that I have for you, and I'm going to put you on the spot. The first is, who was in high school, did you have a favorite teacher? And if so, who had the most profound impact?
Oh, wow. Yeah, you did put me on the spot. There were two people. It's really hard to pick between them. Mr. Grace, Gene Grace, was a really big influence for me. He was very supportive, but not very lenient, in a way that when I did well, he treated me well. If I didn't, then he would let me know. And of course, the other one is Miss Barclay, Maeve Barclay, who wanted me to do student government. I thought she lost her mind. Yeah. And the fact of doing a speech and doing all these different things was really very foreign to me. Mm-hmm. But she really opened my mind to explore different things. So they're definitely two of the biggest influences.
So how was Miss Barkley as a student government sponsor?
She was the same. There was no games, but somehow I always dealt with people who could just be very straight up with me, and it was always easier for me to deal with that. I was never very sensitive to it, and if you were with her, it probably wasn't going to work out well for you, because she was going to be very blunt and tell you exactly what she thinks, and I feel like you got to hear that sometimes, and that definitely benefited me later on, but.
At the time.
Yeah, at the time, it's like climbing a mountain, to work in this relationship, like you got to put the work in. And but once I got to the top as a senior, it came with certain freedoms. I was able to have certain flexibilities, and I partook in more projects and did different things. So overall, it was a great benefit.
One last question for you. Over the years at Lake Howell, we've had quite a few phenomenal athletes, and we're just going to talk about the football side of it. Marquette Smith, Brandon Marshall, Kristen Jones, Chuck Scott, Trevor Price, Tam Hopkins, and of course you. So this is your opportunity to, out of that group and some of the others that failed to mention, who's the best athlete?
Oh, man, the best one. My mind immediately, I'm thinking Brandon's a pretty special one. But when I think of like just the ultimate, Marquette was pretty special. If you put on his highlight film today, it's still like one of the best highlight films you'll ever see. So I say Marquette and then Brandon after that. I'm not gonna put me up there.
No.
Nah. Even though I was, big and I could move, they're just a little bit different, and I got respect for what they were able to do.
How has football just changed from what you see now to back when you were playing?
I think it just continues to get faster. Believe it or not, it's hard to believe that it can get faster, but guys are still big. It's still, the scheme of it is still moving quickly, but the ability and actual speed of how they're moving is getting faster.
How often do you wear your ring?
I wear it a couple times a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, usually during Super Bowl week, and then sometimes I just feel like it, and I'll bring it out, wear it to dinner. Yeah.
Now, did they have a special ring ceremony for you, for the athletes?
Yeah, one of the owners of the Giants is also owner of Tiffany's. So when we had ours, it was in Tiffany's in Manhattan. So it was a pretty nice event, and the ring was made by Tiffany's. So first class, and that's kind of the Giant way. So yeah, it was nice.
Do you often get to see any of the athletes with the Giants? I think I saw you with Strahan when he had a celebration. I can't remember specifically what it was.
Yeah, we went up there when they retired his jersey. I was able to take my son, which was great. Got to enjoy the game, got to go to a celebration party for him, and then currently I'm doing this game time cycling with Amani Toomer. So we'll be suffering together as we do these challenges around the nation. So we try to keep in touch as much as possible.
Well, thank you again for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. Yeah, thank you.